Well, hello and welcome to a very special edition of Mainframe Comic Con. Tim Sale, a man whose name is synonymous with great comic book art. Well, he is here to talk about an upcoming fan event that he's doing. Please help me in welcoming to Mainframe Comic Con, Mr. Tim Sale. Tim,
Hi.
how are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Fantastic. Well, I want to go ahead kick things off and talk a little bit about an upcoming fan event you're doing with the folks over at Talent Talk. You partnered with the folks at Talent Talk for a one-night-only fan event where fans get a chance to get commissioned pieces from you, participate in live Q&A. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in this online event?
Sure. I believe Talent Talk did a thing with Matt Wagner.
Yeah.
And it's going to be just kind of like that. And he suggested doing it like that, where I would be drawing while talking to people. But I don't have that ability. So kind of like what Matt did, we set up a thing where people could ask ahead of time for what they wanted. And I told them what the format would be, which is 6x8 pieces of paper with ink wash drawings on them. But it's, headshots and maybe busts. And I would do a lot of that ahead of time and probably just do the wash while talking.
Well, it's going to be an absolute awesome event. It takes place January 20th. You guys can get more information over at talenttalklive.com. I believe there might still be some tickets available, or it could be sold out at the time of this.
No, it's sold out.
Sold out. Well, I'm sure it won't be the last one you do over at Talent Talk. So moving on, I want to talk a little bit about one of your most iconic pieces of fiction, and that, of course, is what is like the DC Bible, Batman: The Long Halloween. I mean, 13 months, 13 issues. The story takes place after Frank Miller's Batman Year One, deals with Gotham's transition from mob town to sort of supervillain city, focusing on the fall of Harvey Dent, Bruce's introduction to Selina Kyle, and so much more. How did you get involved in that project?
Well, me and my partner, Jeff Loeb, desperately wanted to do something. We had done 3 Halloween specials prior to the Long Halloween. And those are all collected, by the way. There's a collection of those 3. They were all either 48 or 64 pages long. And Jeff just had the idea to do a murder mystery. I mean, to make, a detective story. And it was something he had never done, something I had never done. I'm a big murder mystery reader. Fiction, I'm not a true crime guy. But Jeff really sort of wasn't, but he was a huge Godfather fan, is a huge Godfather fan. And so, there was a lot of the Godfather in that, but also there was a lot of stuff that we were riffing off of Year One, and characters that either were created by Frank or alluded to. And then we just broadened the whole Falcone family tree, and made it really kind of the story of Gotham changing from from a mob city to the freaks city, but also the story of Harvey and Bruce, Batman, and Gordon, and how all that impacted just the 3 of them too. So.
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit about your iconic character design in these books. I mean, Joker's long face, long teeth, Poison Ivy's, jungle of hair, and Scarecrow's kind of beats.
Yeah, that's all me, and that began with I reimagined the Scarecrow in the first Halloween special. I never liked the classic sort of brown outfit that he had, but I was a huge fan of The Scarecrow of Romney Marsh, which was a Disney three-part episode on the wonderful world of Disney when I was growing up. And starring Patrick McGowan. I recommend it to anybody. It's not on Disney Plus, which breaks my heart. But at any rate, and DC just let me do it. They didn't say anything about that. They were very worried that about some other things, like how I would draw Bruce and stuff like that. But just let all that go. And they continued to let it all go when I was reimagining the Joker the way that you described, and other characters. And by the time we got to Dark Victory, well, we worked with Archie Goodwin as the editor on Long Halloween, and he got sick and passed away during that year that we were working on it. But he was an incredibly encouraging and open to experimentation editor. He helped Jeff a lot, I think, probably more than me, even though he was a accomplished artist himself. But he was more of a writer, editor. And then we went to Dark Victory, which is the sequel. We got to work with Mark Chiarello as our editor, and he's much more art oriented, and so I really blossomed under that, and he let all kinds of stuff happen, and eternally grateful to him for that.
What is it you think about that particular story that resonates so much with fans this many years later? Is there something you can point to that you think, you know what, this is what I think we did right?
Well, I think it's the detective aspect, the murder mystery aspect. We try to throw as many villains in there as we could. It was a kind of formula to each storyline in each issue. With there had to be, obviously a Batman thing, usually a Gordon thing, and a villain thing. And there were variations off of that, but those three storylines played off each other so well. There was a behind the scenes, there was right in your face stuff, that kind of thing. And I think Jeff wrote the hell out of it. And the thing with Jeff, when we first started working on Batman, the first Halloween special, he just wrote stuff I couldn't wait to draw. And that's a very unusual thing. I had 15 years, some of it was Jeff actually, before Batman, on Challengers of the Unknown, of doing a lot of work that I didn't really have my heart in. And some of that was because writers were writing what they wanted to write, but they weren't thinking about the pictures so much. And Jeff really had a visual sense. He can't draw for shit, but he had a really good visual sense. He came from movies and TV, so he had that. And I think that all that just, we were very, very different people, but we got along great. And, he used to, at the beginning, he used to just call me up and we'd talk for 5 hours and he would describe each page to me. And I would take notes and write down and that kind of thing.
Really? Just detailed notes,
us.
Like very specific details on each page?
Well, not in an Alan Moore kind of way, no. But it was really most important because I think he was working his way through, and this is not the way we work anymore. He writes a full script for me, which I prefer that because it allows me to. He doesn't have a lot of description in it. The description will be minimal, but he'll have the dialogue in it that he may change. But it allows me to design a panel or a page around the word balloons where they're going to be. and that just helps a tremendous amount. I mean, I'm more of a design guy than anything, really. I
And
think.
what a fun sandbox to play in, you know. And he's like,
Yeah.
here's Batman's entire rogues gallery,
Right.
origins and all. Go have fun. I mean,
Right.
have you had a job, a gig like that was just like, Jesus Christ, I got to play with all the toys at once.
Well, honestly, I grew up a Marvel guy, not a DC guy, and so a lot of these characters were new to me. I knew the Joker and some of the biggies, but I didn't know Poison Ivy, and I redesigned her because Dave McKean had done a story with the Black Orchid with Neil Gaiman, and I love the way that looked. And I thought it was just going to be a one-time gig drawing her, and now it turns out she's all everywhere. And so I'd have to draw those damn ivy leaves and everything.
A shitload of them.
Yeah, shitload. And it's a great visual. It just takes, a long time.
Okay.
So I didn't really have the, I get to draw kind of thing that I had later with some of the Marvel stuff.
Yeah.
But as I got into it, I tremendously looked forward to doing it all.
Yeah.
And I also wasn't a big Godfather fan before the Long Halloween, and became one just by following Jeff and looking at the movie again. I'd only seen it in high school, and it all just meshed,
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's an iconic tale, and I don't know if you've seen the set photos for Matt Reeves' The Batman movie that's coming out that has little pumpkins on the front of the mansion and stuff. They probably
I know he's acknowledged that Long Halloween is part of his process.
Yeah, it
Although
seems like
there's a number of other things.
it seems like an obvious pairing. I know they're keeping that whole movie kind of under wraps, but I mean,
Right.
they've got all these villains, and it's all origin stories, and you got the Catwoman, and you got all this stuff. It just seemed, and then those pumpkin photos show up, and it's like, well, this is just clearly gonna be Long Halloween. Do you guys ever hear anything like anything that would add fuel to the rumor fire of it being a Long Halloween script?
Reeves has acknowledged it in print, and Christopher Nolan acknowledged it in his Batman trilogy, as did some of the actors involved and stuff like that. So all that's there, and there's a lot of stuff in some of the games, the video games that people play, that a lot of that is from Long Halloween. So
Yeah.
we get nothing from that.
Yeah.
It's all licensed property. But
you said that earlier when we were in our little pre-show conversation about the animated movie that's coming out, and you guys don't have a whole lot of input as far as the look and the feel of the.
we don't have any.
Yeah, I can't imagine animated Long Halloween not looking, like your style. Like the animated Dark Knight Returns is very similar to the book. I can't imagine Long Halloween looking different.
Well,
You want to see Poison Ivy with crazy shit coming out of her hair.
Yeah, but if you're trying to animate that's just. I mean, that'd be great, and you're not going to call it the Long Halloween and not try to do, at least the redesign of the characters, right?
Right.
But it's 24 frames a second that they have to create, and
They're professional. That's their job.
I know, but that's what Bruce Timm and Darwin knew how to do.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that was design-y stuff. Get the look right, the general look right. But it has to be, I mean, you go back and look at those cartoons, and it's really very rudimentary, but it really works because A, the writing is superb, and B, the design aspect of it. It's very sort of retro, but it still has that Saturday morning cartoon kind of thing. Not Hanna-Barbera, but
Yeah.
very simple. So I don't know how you get my style into that, but let's see.
I guess we'll find out soon
Yeah.
enough. Moving on from Long Halloween, I mean, you talk about characters. I mean, you've worked extensively at DC and, of course, at Marvel as well. What are some of your favorite characters to draw, DC and Marvel, ones that you really like to revisit and dig your teeth into?
Well, I've kind of drawn the ones that I really wanted to dig into. So, the Marvel stuff was, again, I grew up with Marvel comics, and so the Marvel stuff was very much trying to recapture my teenage years, but also I wanted a different look for each character, which is something I try to do in general. To have the art style reflect the story that's happening. And so Daredevil, I wanted it to look very New York. And it was the first thing I'd done on a major scale in ink wash, because it lended to a sort of more graphic look to it, more bricks, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Spider-Man had a very sort of 60s pop look to it. The coloring was different, and everything had to fit. It was the same way that at DC, when we went to Superman for All Seasons from Long Halloween, Jeff and I wanted a very different look.
Very different, yeah.
And I think it worked out great. But DC was pretty freaked out. Yeah. Where's the Batman guy? Well, it's not Batman.
What's all this color? What's all the pinks?
Where's all the black?
Where's
all the black? Yeah.
Well, I want to talk. Every time we have artists here on the show, we like to do a little bit of a deep dive into sort of your process. But first, I mean, who do you draw inspiration from now, and when you first kind of were getting started and learning your craft? Who are some of your heroes in the comic and art world?
Getting started was all over the place because getting started was I was about 13 when I really started drawing about comics and drawing on comics because I was just reading so many of them. And as almost all artists do, you pick something up for a while and see if it works for you, and if it doesn't, you find something else. But the first person that really, and so I emulated Barry Smith, and then Barry Windsor Smith, same guy, but different looks. And but there were people like Neil Adams and Steranko and John Buscema and John Romita that I just couldn't. I wanted to draw like that, but some of the influence got in and still stays in. I looked at a lot of John Romita Sr. when I was working on Spider-Man Blue, but the first person that really clicked, I think, that still lingers with me was Alex Toth, and his use of designing with black just really got into me. So
yeah.
But after that, there were. It wasn't until I had done Batman for a while. I did a story called Blades with James Robinson, which was a three-parter in Legends of the Dark Knight, and I was still really feeling my way. I knew I didn't have it quite, and it wasn't until the first Halloween special with Jeff where I really began to figure it out that way. But then later on, especially working with Chiarello, he opened my eyes to that and access to a computer, which I'd never had. Opened my eyes to Yeah, I was a starving artist, and I couldn't afford books that much, and so it was very hard to broaden your scope of where to look other than comics. But Mark knew an awful lot about American illustration from the last century, especially mid-century, and so I took a lot from that. That influenced me a lot. He's also a huge Toth guy, so I could always rely on that with him.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of different influences. There's a
Yeah.
Spanish artist called Ruben Palajero, who had a series called Dieter Lumpen. And he's done many, many other things. But that was the first time I saw his work. And I highly recommend it. It was a real influence for me. Great designer, very free line, heavy blacks and bright colors, and a thin line. And heavy blacks and a thin line is, I carry that to this day.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure your process has changed considerably over your long career, but kind of where you are now, can you walk us through briefly? So, what are your steps when you approach a piece? I mean, from concept to pencils to ink to wash. What's kind of your process these days, start to finish?
It isn't consistent, and has never been that consistent. I'll have periods where it's very consistent, and other times working at it different ways. I don't, when I do what people call thumbnails, it's really just notes on the edges of a script. And I'll draw a little box, and I'll break down the panels just kind of geometrically in that little box, and either make notes or just, but or little scribbles. But it's more about figuring out panel size and pacing, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then, depending on what my schedule is, how fast I have to turn it around. For instance, on Dark Victory, I would just go right to pencils from that, and do them pretty loose, but do them, and then have another pass at them, right? Tighten it all up, and then I wing it. And that's basically it. But other times I will I'll work up a full page small, like in a sketchbook, and then enlarge that and light box it onto a comic book size piece of paper. And it just takes it longer to do it that way. So
I saw an article once, and I'm not sure if it was you, and ignore my ignorance, but you talked about, it was a Batman book that you guys were working on, where you would do the color in the wash and then lay the black over it on a piece of acetate. Is that something that you did, or were you just commenting on someone else's work?
No. That's you're mixing up a couple of things. I don't do color. I'm colorblind, and I can't work a computer. This is high technology to me, what we're doing right now.
You're doing a great job.
I certainly can't color or anything like that. Ink wash is just diluted ink, so it's all gray, and it's colored on the computer by a colorist. And it was amazingly hard to find a colorist that would just leave it be. I've done all the shading and everything for you. Just colorize it, kind of. And Matt Hollingsworth was the first one who understood that. And then, but all this was sort of late 90s, early 2000s. And in the meantime, people like Dave Stewart have mastered it all. A lot of people have. But that was a very hard process. What you're thinking about is what was called Blue Line, and that's what we did on Superman for All Seasons. So I would ink it just in a thin line, and this is a very old-fashioned pre-computer way to do these things. And they would treat a piece of paper chemically, lay an acetate version, a clear acetate version of the black stuff that I had put down on paper. They would transfer that to acetate, lay that onto the chemically treated piece of paper or board, and at a comic book page size, so smaller, and then shine a light through it. And when you peeled the acetate off, there would be a blue line that had been created on the paper, and the colorist would actually paint on that separate piece of paper, and then they would lay the black back on it and print from that. So registration would often get screwy, and once computers came in, there was no point in doing it. But that a lot of European stuff had been done that way. Matt Wagner had worked that way with Joe Matt on Grendel. So it was around. It just wasn't used a lot because it was so complicated to do. But I really wanted a really painted look, and there weren't a lot of people who could do that with a computer at that point.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did in Superman.
Computers take all the fun out of everything. I know we're way over our time here, but I want to talk because our fans are always asking us, where can they get art? Where can they get comic book memorabilia from some of our guests? So I want to talk a little bit about the website Essential Sequential.
Yeah.
How'd you get involved with them, and what can you tell us about that, please?
Well, it's Jason Schachter's creation. He's an artist rep. He reps about, 20 or 30 of us guys and gals. Dan Panosian, Dave Johnson, Juanjo Guarnido, a lot of really great people and great artists. Mindy Lee. So it's all over the map. But I was there. I was maybe his third or fourth client, as it were, and he's now expanded a lot. But he began as somebody who would help put together sketchbooks, but primarily help us all through going to conventions. So he would make all the banners. He would run the show. He'd have scanners there, so we could have our sketches scanned, and maybe that would go into another sketchbook for the next year, that kind of thing. He would handle all the badges. He just was the coordinator for all of that. More importantly than anything else, probably, is he's honest. And there are not always a lot of honest people handling other people's money.
Yeah, right.
So, and he's a good friend. So
the website's Essential Sequential, guys. Head over. There's tons of cool stuff on there. I was just on there today. Where else can people find you online if they want to maybe order some prints, do some commissions outside of, say, Talent Talk and Essential Sequential?
Oh, well, nothing outside of, for that kind of thing, nothing outside of Essential Sequential. I have a Facebook page, fans of Tim Sale, and that's basically where I exist. I do have a Instagram account, but that's handled by somebody else, a family member of ours. And so I don't interact that much with them. I interact a lot on Facebook with on the website.
No TikTok, huh?
No
dancing and
no Twitter at all.
Yeah, that can be a pretty toxic environment, Twitter.
Yeah, my wife is addicted.
Well, your talent talk, I just want to reiterate, is Wednesday, January 20th. I know we've gotten way over our time, so I really want to thank you guys and head on over to talenttalklive.com for all kinds of great talks and interviews. Tim's talk is sold out, sadly, but I'm looking forward to hosting it.
Well, there may be another one coming up in February.
Fantastic.
It depends on my schedule, and if some things start to happen that I hope will happen soon, I'm not going to have time to do it. But if I do have time, I'm happy to do another one.
Some mystery, unannounced, super secretive things.
Yes.
Some unofficial stuff. All right, we won't dive into that. But Tim, thanks so much for being here, man. This was outstanding. I'm sorry it ran about 15 minutes over than what I promised you, but it's been absolutely eye-opening. A real treat.
Thank you. I had a good time.
All right, guys, check out Tim Sale online on Facebook and find him on talenttalklive.com. That's about all we got, guys. We'll be here next time with some more great interviews with comic book creators. And thanks again, Tim. We'll see you later.
Sure. All right.